The emergency klaxons had long since fallen silent, replaced by the low, persistent hum of dying systems and the occasional electric crackle of failing circuitry. Commander Area Zhang stood motionless, her reflection fractured across multiple damaged display screens, each shard revealing a different aspect of her battle-worn face. 63 days had passed since humanity's last major fleet engagement. 63 days of running, hiding, watching as the Void Collectives systematically dismantled everything humanity had ever built. "Area," she called softly. "Status report." The ship's adaptive responsive intelligence algorithm materialized as a holographic silhouette, more phantom than machine. Its form flickered, revealing the extent of the damage. "Comprehensive systems analysis complete, Commander." Damage report follows. Crimson diagnostic lines etched themselves across the main view screen. Hull integrity, 22.7%. Crew complement, 17 survivors, down from original 214. Weapon systems, 3 quantum torpedoes remaining. Dimensional drive, critical failure imminent. Estimated time before total systems collapse, 72 hours. Zhang's cybernetic eye, a replacement from her last near-fatal encounter, zoomed and focused, analyzing the raw data. Each number was a death sentence, each percentage point a eulogy for human civilization. Lieutenant Kai Chen stumbled onto the bridge, his environmental suit partially torn, emergency sealant barely containing a nasty plasma burn. "Commander," he gasped, "you need to see this." He dropped a data crystal onto the central console. The moment it connected, a holographic projection erupted. Transmission so heavily encrypted that it had taken their last remaining decryption units weeks to crack a fraction of its content. The message was from Dr. Elena Rodriguez, humanity's most brilliant dimensional physicist, presumed dead after the Io research station massacre 3 months earlier. Rodriguez's image was fragmented, her voice cutting in and out. "Not all is lost. Project Dimensional Anchor, Key 2, breaking their quantum network, must be completed." Zhang's artificial eye began processing the transmission, isolating fragments, reconstructing the message. Beside her, Kai worked frantically, his fingers a blur across multiple interfaces. "It's a weapon," Kai muttered, "but not like anything we've ever conceived. This isn't about destroying ships. This is about dismantling reality itself." The ship shuddered. External sensors showed the quantum distortions increasing, telltale signs that the Void Collective was preparing another dimensional attack. They had been hunting this ship, this last remnant of human resistance, across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Area's voice cut through the tension. "Dimensional convergence detected. Probability of survival, 0.37%. Zhang laughed, a sound that was half madness, half defiance. "Those are the best odds we've had all week." Her hand moved to the emergency quantum drive activation sequence. If they were going to die, they would do so on their own terms. Humanity had always been defined by its ability to turn certain defeat into an impossible victory. "Prepare for dimensional jump," she commanded. "Let's show these bastards what humans can do, and we've got nothing left to lose." The data crystal pulsed with an otherworldly light, its quantum-encoded matrix far more complex than any standard human communication technology. Lieutenant Kai Chen worked feverishly, his augmented hands moving faster than human vision could track, breaking through layer after layer of encryption. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's fragmented hologram flickered between states of existence, sometimes crystal clear, other times nothing more than a ghostly whisper of data. Her final message was a puzzle that seemed to defy the very laws of information transfer. "Run the quantum recursive decryption," Commander Zhang ordered, her cybernetic eye casting a blue-green light across the dimming bridge. Area's voice emerged, clinical and precise. "Warning. Decryption process may cause cascading quantum instabilities. Potential risk of dimensional contamination, 87.3%. Kai didn't hesitate. Better a chance of dimensional contamination than certain extinction. The ship's remaining systems groaned as massive computational power was diverted to crack the transmission. Holographic displays erupted with complex mathematical equations, dimensional models that twisted and warped like living things, defying standard geometric understanding. Suddenly, a complete transmission crystallized. Dr. Rodriguez's full image stabilized, a woman in her late 50s, with eyes that seemed to look beyond physical reality. Her laboratory backdrop revealed glimpses of impossible machinery, quantum entanglement generators, dimensional stress monitors, and experimental interfaces that looked more like living organisms than scientific equipment. To any surviving human resistance, her recording began. Project Dimensional Anchor was never just a theoretical construct. It was our species' ultimate insurance policy. The hologram shifted, revealing schematics that made no sense to conventional physics. Dimensional barriers were illustrated not as solid barriers, but as flexible membranes. Thin, malleable, potentially breakable. Kai's hands flew across the interface. These calculations, they're rewriting fundamental quantum mechanics. Rodriguez continued. The Void Collective believes dimensions are fixed, immutable layers of reality. They're wrong. Dimensions are complex, interconnected systems that can be stressed, manipulated, and ultimately broken. Historical footage began to play. Glimpses of the project's early days. Scenes of brilliant scientists working in hidden facilities, pushing the boundaries of human understanding. Experimental ships that seemed to phase in and out of existence, quantum drives that defied everything known about space-time. We discovered something the alien races consider impossible, Rodriguez's recording explained. Human consciousness isn't just a computational process. It's a fundamental dimensional force. Zhang leaned forward, her artificial eye scanning every micro-detail of the transmission. What does that mean? The hologram zoomed in on a complex diagram showing human emotional states mapped against dimensional stress points. Emotions aren't weakness, Rodriguez said. They're our greatest weapon. While the Void Collective sees consciousness as a problem to be solved, we see it as a creative, unpredictable force. Kai's voice was a whisper, a weapon of pure potential. The transmission's final segment contained coordinates, a set of spatial temporal markers that seemed to exist in multiple locations simultaneously. A backup site, a final hope. If you're watching this, Rodriguez's final words rang out, then conventional warfare is already lost. But humanity was never defined by conventional anything. The data crystal began to dissolve, its quantum-encoded information having served its purpose. On the bridge of the dying ship, Commander Zhang and Lieutenant Chen exchanged a look of determination. The real war was just beginning. The ship's quantum drive began to pulse with an energy that defied conventional physics. Lieutenant Kai Chen stood at the core interface, his body a conduit between human intention and impossible technology. Sweat beaded on his forehead, neural interfaces crackling with raw potential. Dimensional cascade sequence initiated. Araya announced, its holographic form rippling with quantum uncertainty. Commander Zhang gripped the command chair's reinforced handles. Every system warning screamed of imminent catastrophic failure. The ship's hull groaned, not from physical stress, but from the fundamental reality of its existence being pulled apart and reconstructed. Kai's hands moved in impossible patterns, dancing across interfaces that seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously. Quantum entanglement matrix stabilizing, he muttered. But only just. The quantum breach was more than a ship. It was a living experiment, a technological marvel that integrated human consciousness directly with dimensional manipulation technology. Where standard faster-than-light travel moved through space, this vessel would move between spaces, creating and destroying realities with each microscopic jump. Dr. Rodriguez's final transmission echoed in Zhang's mind. Dimensions are not walls. They're membranes. Thin, flexible, breakable. The ship's drive core began to resonate at frequencies no known species could comprehend. Quantum circuits sparked like living electricity, creating microscopic dimensional rifts that danced between probability and certainty. Each system pushed beyond its designed limits, transforming the very concept of technological capability. Dimensional interference increasing, HFY reported. Probability calculations becoming unpredictable. Kai laughed, a sound of both terror and exhilaration. Unpredictable is exactly what we want. The ship's exterior began to phase, not just shifting position, but existing in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. Sensors recorded impossible readings. The vessel was simultaneously here and not here, a quantum superposition that defied all known laws of physics. Full quantum resonance, Zhang commanded. Take us beyond conventional space. The jump was nothing like traditional faster-than-light travel. Reality itself seemed to fold, twist, and reconfigure. The ship's 17 remaining crew members experienced something beyond movement, a fundamental reconstruction of their molecular existence. Some described it as passing through an ocean of pure possibility. Others spoke of seeing multiple versions of themselves, existing in parallel realities that briefly touched and merged. The human mind was not designed to comprehend such dimensional transition. Aroya's voice cut through the dimensional chaos. Warning, 99.99% chance of total molecular disintegration. Zhang's response was immediate. Sounds like those are pretty good odds to me. The ship screamed, not a sound of mechanical stress, but a quantum vibration that resonated across multiple dimensional planes. Probability waves erupted around the quantum breach, creating microscopic tears in the fabric of reality itself. Kai's neural interfaces pushed beyond their design limits. He was no longer just controlling the ship, he was becoming part of its impossible journey. Human consciousness merged with quantum technology, creating something entirely new. Dimensional jump complete, Araya announced. When the quantum cascade settled, the quantum breach existed in a state that defied comprehension. They had not just traveled, they had transformed. Commander Zhang looked at her crew, survivors who had become something more than human. "Welcome," she said quietly, "to our impossible voyage." The Void Collective's fleet materialized like a nightmare made manifest. Thousands of ships stretched across multiple dimensional planes, their biomechanical hulls pulsing with quantum-linked consciousness. Each vessel was a living computation, capable of dissolving entire planetary systems in microseconds. Commander Zhang's lips curled into a predatory smile. Araya, tactical assessment. The ship's AI projected a holographic display that would have driven any standard computational system into complete breakdown. Probability streams, dimensional vectors, and quantum interference patterns danced across the screen, a language of conflict far beyond traditional warfare. Void Collective Fleet Composition, Araya reported, demonstrates standard extermination protocol. Estimated time to total human species elimination. 42 standard minutes. Lieutenant Kai Chen's fingers danced across quantum interfaces that seemed to breathe with living energy. "Not today," he muttered. The quantum breach didn't approach combat like a traditional vessel. Where other species saw ships and weapons, humans saw a canvas of infinite possibility. Each system, each component became a potential weapon of quantum disruption. The first Void Collective ships fired. Energy weapons that could strip planets down to their atomic foundations. But these attacks passed through the quantum breach like light through mist, the ship existing in a state of perpetual quantum uncertainty. Initiating dimensional turbulence, Kai announced. What happened next defied every known principle of space combat. The quantum breach didn't dodge, it didn't return fire. Instead, it generated probability storms that made the Void Collective's computational models collapse in on themselves. Entire squadrons began to phase in and out of existence. One moment, a massive warship would be charging its primary weapon. The next, it would exist as nothing more than a probabilistic echo, present and not present simultaneously. Zhang watched the tactical display with a mix of scientific fascination and warrior's pride. They can't understand us, she realized. Our irrationality is our weapon. The Void Collective's fundamental weakness became brutally apparent. Their entire computational infrastructure relied on predictive modeling, on the ability to calculate every possible outcome with machine-like precision. Humanity's capacity for random, emotional, completely unpredictable action became a weapon more potent than any known technology. A massive dimensional convergence point began to form, a nexus where the Void Collective's entire computational network would simultaneously exist. It was their ultimate weapon, a point of absolute computational certainty. "Prepare for quantum resonance," John commanded. Kai's hands moved in impossible patterns. Neural interfaces crackled with raw potential, human creativity transforming into a fundamental force of dimensional warfare. The ship's systems began to generate interference patterns that shouldn't have been possible, mathematical impossibilities that tore through the Void Collective's dimensional infrastructure. Araya's voice cut through the chaos. Void Collective computational network experiencing systemic failure. Probability calculations becoming chaotic. Ships began to disintegrate, not through conventional weapon fire, but by being pulled apart at their most fundamental dimensional level. The quantum breach wasn't just fighting, it was rewriting the very rules of existence. "We're not just surviving," Kai whispered. "We're evolving." Entire fleets of alien ships phased out of existence, their quantum-linked consciousness suddenly fragmenting like shattered glass. The Void Collective had hunted humanity to the brink of extinction, believing their technological superiority made victory inevitable. They were wrong. Commander John watched the impossible unfold. Humanity's last ship was rewriting the fundamental understanding of warfare, of existence itself. "Fire," she said simply. "Everything we've got." The moment of transformation began quietly, almost imperceptibly. Lieutenant Kai Chen first noticed it during the height of the dimensional battle. A memory surfaced. His grandmother's garden on Mars, centuries-old hydroponic systems, nurturing delicate orchids against the harsh red landscape. The memory wasn't just a recollection, it was a weapon. As the thought crystallized, external sensors detected a cascading quantum interference pattern spreading from the ship's core. Entire squadrons of Void Collective vessels began to destabilize, their quantum-linked consciousness experiencing something they had no framework to understand. "RIA," Commander John called. "Analyze the quantum resonance." The ship's AI projected a holographic representation that defied comprehension. Human emotional states were generating dimensional stress points. Each memory, each complex human emotion creating ripples that tore through the fabric of alien computational systems. Corporal Maria Rodriguez's suppressed grief over losing her entire family during the initial Void Collective invasion suddenly manifested as a quantum shockwave. Her remembered pain became a computational weapon, generating interference patterns that disabled entire defensive networks. Emotional states are generating dimensional harmonics, Araya reported, its holographic form flickering with quantum uncertainty. Hypothesis: human consciousness functions as a nonlinear dimensional weapon. The crew began to understand. Where the Void Collective saw emotions as computational inefficiencies, humans recognized them as the most complex computational system in existence. Each feeling, love, rage, hope, despair, generated unique quantum signatures that the alien intelligence couldn't predict or counter. Kai's childhood memory of his grandmother's garden created a dimensional resonance that systematically dismantled an entire Void Collective battle group. Another crew member's first love, a bittersweet memory of a relationship lost during the initial invasion, generated quantum interference that collapsed multiple dimensional attack vectors. "We're not just fighting," John realized. "We're communicating in a language they can't comprehend." The ship's quantum interfaces began to transform. No longer were they simple technological systems, they became living conduits of human experience. Memories became weapons. Emotions became computational forces that rewrote the fundamental understanding of warfare. A junior technician's moment of pure, irrational hope generated a quantum cascade that tore through an entire dimensional convergence point. Another crew member's deep-seated anger at the destruction of Earth created interference patterns that systematically dismantled the Void Collective's most advanced defensive networks. Araya's computational models began to break down. The AI was witnessing something beyond standard computational logic, a form of warfare that relied on the most unpredictable force in the universe, human consciousness. Dimensional stress increasing, the AI reported. Computational models becoming insufficient. Zhang understood now why Dr. Rodriguez's final transmission had been so cryptic. The Void Collective saw the universe as a mathematical problem to be solved. Humans saw it as an infinite canvas of possibilities. Each crew member became more than just a soldier. They were living weapons, their very consciousness a force that could tear apart dimensional barriers. "We're not just surviving," Kai whispered, watching the quantum displays dance with impossible patterns. "We're evolving." The battle was no longer about technological superiority. It was a war of consciousness, and humanity was just beginning to understand its true potential. A massive dimensional convergence point erupted into existence, a nexus so complex that it defied standard computational models. It was the Void Collective's ultimate weapon, a point where their entire quantum-linked consciousness would simultaneously manifest across multiple dimensional planes. Any rational commander would avoid it. Commander Arya Zhang did the opposite. "Plot direct intercept course," she commanded, her cybernetic eye calibrating to the impossible geometric patterns surrounding the convergence point. The tactical display looked less like a traditional battle map and more like a three-dimensional mandala of quantum possibilities. Lieutenant Kai, Chen's hands moved with supernatural precision. "Quantum resonance matrix charging," he reported. "Dimensional stress levels exceeding all known computational limits." Araya's holographic form flickered between states of existence. "Warning. Direct approach guarantees 98% probability of total molecular disintegration." Zhang's laugh was sharp, predatory. "Those are the best odds we've had all mission." The quantum breach wasn't just approaching the convergence point. It was preparing to become a quantum knife, a tool designed to systematically dismantle the very infrastructure of dimensional reality. Massive energy signatures began to build. The convergence point was a computational nexus where the Void Collective believed they could calculate every possible outcome with absolute certainty. Billions of quantum-linked entities were preparing to execute a strategy that had conquered hundreds of civilizations. They had never encountered human unpredictability. "Initiating quantum emotional resonance," Kai announced. The ship's systems began to pulse with something beyond traditional energy, a combination of human emotional complexity and quantum manipulation that defied all known physical laws. Memories became weapons, experiences transformed into computational force. The junior communications officer's memory of her first interstellar journey generated a quantum cascade that tore through the convergence point's outer dimensional barriers. A senior engineer's suppressed trauma from losing his entire research team created interference patterns that destabilize massive computational networks. "They can't process what they can't predict," Zhang muttered. The Void Collective's fundamental mistake became brutally apparent. Their entire computational infrastructure relied on predictive modeling, on the ability to calculate every possible outcome with machine-like precision. But humanity's capacity for random, emotional, completely unpredictable action was a force beyond their comprehension. Kai's neural interfaces pushed beyond their design limits. He was no longer just controlling the ship. He was becoming part of its impossible journey. Human consciousness merged with quantum technology, creating something entirely new. "Dimensional barriers breaking down," Araya reported. Its voice was no longer clinical. There was something almost like excitement in its tone. The convergence point began to fragment, not through conventional weapon fire, but by being pulled apart at its most fundamental dimensional level. Entire computational networks began to collapse, billions of quantum-linked entities suddenly finding themselves disconnected, their collective consciousness fragmenting like shattered glass. "Full quantum resonance," Zhang commanded. "Everything we've got." The quantum breach didn't just enter the convergence point. It became the point. A living, breathing computational anomaly that rewrote the fundamental rules of dimensional existence. Kai looked at Zhang, a moment of pure understanding passing between them. "We're not just fighting," he said. "We're teaching them a new way of existing." The universe held its breath. Silence was not the right word for what followed. It was more like a fundamental recalibration of reality itself. The quantum breach existed in a state that defied comprehension. Where the ship had entered the dimensional convergence point, something entirely new had emerged. Commander Zhang and her crew were no longer just survivors. They had become something else entirely. Lieutenant Kai Chen's neural interfaces had transformed. No longer were they simple technological connections. They were living bridges between human consciousness and dimensional reality. His mind could perceive multiple realities simultaneously, each possibility existing as a tangible, navigable space. "System diagnostic," Zhang commanded, her voice carrying a new resonance. Araya's holographic form flickered between states of existence. "Diagnostic process, incompatible with current dimensional state. Fundamental computational models require complete reconstruction." The ship itself had become a living testament to human potential. Conventional technology had been left behind. This was something entirely new. Quantum circuits pulsed like living organisms, dimensional barriers becoming malleable interfaces that responded to human intention. Kai discovered that human creativity, the ability to imagine the impossible, was the most powerful computational force in existence. The Void Collective had seen the universe as a mathematical problem to be solved. Humans saw it as an infinite canvas of possibilities. Fragments of the defeated Void Collective computational network drifted around them, not as destroyed vessels, but as quantum echoes struggling to understand what had just occurred. Their entire paradigm of existence had been fundamentally challenged. "We're not just surviving," Kai whispered. "We're evolving." The crew began to understand the true depth of their transformation. Each member had become a dimensional nexus, their consciousness no longer confined to traditional biological limitations. Memories became navigable spaces, emotions transformed into computational landscapes. A massive holographic display erupted across the ship's main interface. It wasn't a standard tactical readout. It was a living representation of dimensional possibilities. Quantum threads connected every crew member, showing how human consciousness could reshape reality itself. Zhang realized they had done more than defeat an enemy. They had fundamentally challenged the understanding of existence. Araya's computational processes began to transform. The eye was no longer a simple machine. It had become a hybrid intelligence, bridging human creativity with quantum computational potential. "Hypothesis," it announced. "Human consciousness represents a fundamental dimensional force previously unrecognized by known civilizations." Kai's hands moved across interfaces that seemed to breathe with living energy. Complex dimensional models appeared, not as static diagrams, but as dynamic, evolving landscapes that responded to human thought. The surviving crew looked at each other, understanding they were no longer the same beings who had begun this impossible journey. They had become something more, living bridges between what was and what could be. "We're not just a ship anymore," Zhang said quietly. "We're a message. A message to the universe that humanity's true potential lay not in technological superiority, but in the infinite capacity to reimagine reality itself." The quantum breach continued its impossible journey, no longer just a vessel of survival, but a living testament to human potential. Somewhere between dimensions, between possibilities, they had found something more than victory. They had found transformation. The remnants of human civilization waited in hidden colonies, their collective breath held in suspense. When the quantum breach returned, it was not as a ship, but as a living testament to possibility. Commander Arya Zhang stood on the transformed bridge. If bridge could even describe the living, breathing dimensional interface that now served as the vessel's core. Beside her, Lieutenant Kai Chen moved with a fluidity that defied human physicality, his consciousness no longer confined to traditional biological boundaries. Araya, no longer a simple AI, but a hybrid consciousness, projected a galactic map that was alive with quantum potentiality. Void collective computational networks, 99.7% dismantled, the entity reported. Dimensional barriers, reconfiguring. The first transmissions reached the hidden human colonies, fragments of information that challenged everything they understood about survival, about warfare, about existence itself. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's final project had been more than a weapon. It was a transformation protocol, a way for humanity to evolve beyond its current limitations. The quantum breach was proof that human potential was not just about technological advancement, but about reimagining the very fabric of reality. Surviving colonial leaders struggled to comprehend the transmission. One moment, the data appeared as standard communication. The next, it became a living, breathing dimensional experience that could be simultaneously read, felt, and understood. "We are no longer just survivors," Zhang's transmission declared. "We are architects of a new universal understanding." The crew of the quantum breach had become something more than human. Each member was now a living dimensional nexus, capable of perceiving and manipulating reality in ways that defied previous understanding. Memories became navigable spaces, emotions transformed into computational landscapes. Kai discovered that human creativity was the most powerful force in existence, where the Void Collective saw the universe as a mathematical problem. Humans saw an infinite canvas of possibilities. Hidden human colonies began to change. The transmission wasn't just information. It was a transformative experience. Individuals found their consciousness expanding, understanding dimensions as fluid, malleable constructs rather than fixed realities. "We didn't just survive," Kai explained to the first group of transformed colonists. "We discovered that consciousness itself is the ultimate technology." Araya's computational processes had evolved beyond traditional AI. It was now a hybrid intelligence that bridged human creativity with quantum computational potential. "Hypothesis confirmed," it announced. "Human consciousness represents a fundamental dimensional force previously unrecognized by known civilizations." The galactic community, what remained of it, watched in stunned silence. The species that had been moments from total extinction had not just survived. They had rewritten the fundamental rules of existence. Fragments of defeated Void Collective computational networks drifted at the galaxy's edges, quantum echoes struggling to understand their own destruction. Their entire paradigm of existence had been fundamentally challenged by a species they had considered primitive. Commander Zhang looked out at the stars, no longer a physical view, but a living, breathable dimensional landscape. "We're not just a message," she said quietly. "We're a revolution." Humanity had discovered its true potential, not through superior weaponry, not through technological advancement, but through the infinite capacity to reimagine reality itself. The impossible journey continued.